Good morning, Larry Sefiha.
Good morning to you.
So I'm very happy to meet you today. You are here in the Museum of the Jews in Thessaloniki. Could you tell us a few things about your own history in your family?
First of all, I would like to include the history of my family and the history of the Jews of Thessaloniki. Actually, we have a presence of Jews in Thessaloniki from the time of the foundation of the city, around 350 BC. However, the big number of Jews came from Spain, as it is known, the Sepharad Jews that came from Spain after King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella expelled the Jews with the Alhambra decree in 1492. From that time, all the Jews from Spain went to many Mediterranean cities, and they found, let's say, a familiar port in Thessaloniki, where around 20,000 Jews came at that time. The Jews of Thessaloniki really, and the Jewish community of Thessaloniki really prospered these 500 years until Second World War, when we have the Holocaust, the Shoah, and we have almost a total destruction of our community, because 96% of the population of the Jews of Thessaloniki were deported and exterminated in the concentration camps in Auschwitz-Birkenau. So after the war, we have a community, a small community of only 2,000 Jews in Salonika. At this moment, we are around 1,500, while total in Greece at this time we have around 5,000 Jews. Of course, from the big and prosperous Jewish community before the World War to with many institutions, with many synagogues, with all the welfare programs, what the Jewish community is doing today is trying to keep the welfare programs, the institutions, the school, the elder house, the house for the aged people, the museum that was made some 10 years ago only, and of course we try, because it is something that we're ashamed, but the city of Thessaloniki after the Second World War actually hid the history of the Jews. What we are trying after 70 years from World War II is we try to bring the history of the Jews of Thessaloniki in front, and I have to say that the current mayor, Yannis Boutaris, is a friend of the Jewish community, and he is trying to the same end. We are trying to bring our history to be known to Thessaloniki, to Greece, to Europe, and it's something that only started some years ago. I hope, and I can say that we are in a good road, in a good direction, because not only the history of the Jews of Thessaloniki was not known in Greece, but it was not known also in worldwide. So we are trying to put the history of Thessaloniki and Thessaloniki to its proper position of the big Jewish communities of the diaspora worldwide. This is something that takes time, takes a lot of effort, but I think that we have succeeded over, I can say, the last 2 decades to bring our history to be known to other communities, to Jewish organizations all around the world, and of course to our local community.
You told me that members of your family were hidden during the World War.
Yes, exactly.
Could you explain us a little more?
We were lucky enough. I'm lucky enough because I'm the son of 2 hidden kids. Both my mother and my father were hidden during World War II by Christian families that they didn't know, and of course these families were given the Righteous of the Nation award from the Yad Vashem, and the history is that my father's family was born in Thessaloniki, and during World War II, first they went to Athens, and then from Athens they went to Argos, a small town in Peloponnese, where they were hidden in a small village, in a small cottage house for almost 1.5 years by a Christian family that they didn't know. They said that they were Jews, and this family knew that the Germans, in case they found them, they would kill them. Mm-hmm. So, and also my mother's family were hidden in another small city of Kotronas, down in the Peloponnese, for almost the same period. And it is something very strange that after the liberation, in the same town of Argos, my grandfather with my father, and my grandfather from my mother's side with my mother were met in the town of Argos, and someone said, you know, Mr. Sefiha, this gentleman with a small kid, with a small girl, is Jewish also. And my grandfather asked this man, are you Jewish? But my grandfather from my mother's side was so worried about what happened. He said, no, I'm not Jewish, you are wrong. So actually my mother and my father were met as kids after the liberation at the town of Argos. And some years later they were met and they were married. And that is the history of our family. Of course, both our families, our extended families, had many members that were lost, were deported in Auschwitz-Birkenau and never returned back. So this is a sad story, but this is a story, and this is part of the history of our Jewish communities in Greece generally.
How old are you?
I'm 55 years old.
So how do you feel with all this story?
It's like a fairy tale for me. I mean, if you haven't been there, and and both my mother and my father have written a book, and when you read this book, it's like a fairy tale. It's something that maybe didn't exist at that time. I mean, you really read something that happened, and it's like a fairy tale for me. But this was the truth. This was the reality of that time. And of course, I cannot say I'm very happy that we had the history of two people that were hidden and were not deported and exterminated in the concentration camps. But this also makes you feel that in hard times you have to have humility and to feel that you can help the other. And this is the story of the Jews that happen to be the other for many other people. And of course I believe that these Christian families that actually saved the lives of my parents really gave a lesson for what humanity is.
And you have children?
I have 4 children.
So what do they think of all this?
Okay, they understand the history, but I feel they cannot feel it. As I see it for myself, I really felt all this when I grew up and I made my children. I mean, I feel this burden, I feel all of this coming to me and be part of me later in the stage of my family, and actually after I made my children. I think that my children too are very well aware of what they are, from where they are coming, and this is what I'm telling them. You have to know from where you are coming in order to know where you are going. And I feel that we are in the right direction. Deep inside us, we feel what a Jew is, and if we don't feel it, there are the others that remind us of what we are.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you very much.